Assalamu alaikum, my dear sisters. It's truly an honor to be here today with all of you, commemorating a woman who really embodies resilience in the face of hardship. I know personally I wouldn't be here today if not for Sayyidah Zainab alayhi salam. She has so much to teach us about how to heal from psychological distress. And that's what I'm here to talk about today, is how we can heal from psychological distress and how to develop a Zainabbiya mindset, if you will. As you know, Sayyidah Zainab is the daughter of Imam Ali and Fatima al-Zahra, as well as the granddaughter of Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon them all. And she's also a leader, a world leader. During her lifetime, she was the female scholar of her time, where we had women coming from all over the world to learn from her. She was teaching Quran classes in Kufa during the Khalifate of Imam Ali. Okay? And so even one of her students became the wife of Yazid. Right? She had such a powerful impact on society. Thank you. In her lifetime, she married Abdullah bin Ja'far, who was the son of the famous Ja'far al-Tayyar, who was her cousin. And Ja'far al-Tayyar loved Imam Ali very much, and he was one of the most noble of the Banu Hashim. And as we know, he was martyred during battle. Okay? And so she married his son, Abdullah. They had 4 children together: Aoun, Ali, Muhammad, Abbas, and Kulthum. You know, I often hear in lectures, particularly when there's a man on the pulpit, people will say, women, look at Sayyidah Zainab. She's your role model. Look at Khadija. She's your role model. Look at Fatima. She's your role model. Try to be like her, right? But it's important to realize that Sayyidah Zainab alayhi salam is not just a role model for other women. She's a role model for humanity. There were men who did not have the courage to do what Sayyidah Zainab alayhi salam did. There were men who did not have the bravery and the resilience to face the hardships that she was patiently able to bear. In Islam, women do not need to be empowered by men, because they are already empowered by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Salawat. And it was a tradition in the household of Imam Ali that whenever a new child was born, Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wasallam would actually name that child himself. And actually, if we look at the name Zainab, the name was actually chosen by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, revealed by Allah himself through angel Jibreel to Prophet Muhammad. And so if we look at the name Zainab, it comes from 2 words, okay, Zain and Ab. Zain meaning beauty, and Ab meaning father. And so it literally means beauty of her father. And indeed, she was an adornment and a source of pride for her family, who valued her opinion and her presence in all matters. Okay? And Allah, I think, by choosing the name himself, is demonstrating that while, yes, Zainab alayhi salam does have nobility just by the fact that she is the wife of Imam Ali, right, the daughter of Prophet Muhammad, the granddaughter, we see that her empowerment comes from Allah. Her own identity, her own name and destiny is empowered by the Almighty Allah himself, which is a really beautiful thing to contemplate. When you look at what happened in the court of Yazid, when Yazid asked Sayyidah Zainab, what did you think about what Allah did to your family on the plains of Karbala? She responded, "Ma ra'aytu illa jamila." I saw nothing but the beauty of Allah. And we've heard this before. It's not the first time, sisters, but I'd really like us to reflect on this some more today. And as we know, it was not Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala who was responsible for what happened. But Allah has created a system of free will in which people have the ability to choose between right and wrong, good and evil. And so the result was the evil in which Yazid plotted with his own hands and satanic ambitions. But again, let's reflect on this statement that she said, that I see nothing but the beauty of Allah, from a woman whose name means beauty of her father. Okay? Because I believe that our ummah, especially our community, has some serious healing when it comes to facing stressful situations. And that statement that she made is the premise for some of the concerns that I'd like to bring up today. At times I find there's a disconnect between what is acceptable in terms of mourning and expressing grief and loss during Muharram and Ashura, and what is acceptable in terms of coping with loss in everyday life. And I believe we're all here today not just to feel good about ourselves, right? We're here because we want to make a change. We're here because we want to adopt a Zainabbiya mindset. The Zainabbiya mindset involves seeing the beauty in yourself, seeing the beauty in the people around you, and seeing the beauty in life circumstances that we are facing. So inshallah, my goal here today is to tackle some of these issues and give my suggestions from a psycho-Islamic perspective, inshallah. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. So let's talk about healing from negative self-talk and low self-worth, and how to see the beauty in yourself. Okay. When I speak to my clients who are struggling with relationship issues, be it with a spouse, a family member, maybe a parent, one of the first questions that I ask them is, how do you feel about yourself? Are you kind to yourself? Do you love yourself? And oftentimes that answer is no. And so I tell them, you cannot expect to have a good relationship with other people if you don't have a good relationship with yourself, because your relationship with yourself sets the tone for your relationship with others. And so I found that low self-worth tends to be the result of negative life experiences, where a person has been consistently judged in a negative way. And what happens is they begin to accept these judgments as fact. It becomes internalized to the point that they completely lack self-confidence, right? Which is the opposite of low self-worth, is to have high self-confidence. From a psychological standpoint, we know that confidence is not inherited. Okay, it's not something we inherit from our parents. It's a learned behavior. Anybody can learn to become a more confident person. And that's why you'll find people, if you look at different celebrities like Oprah Winfrey, for example, this was a woman who struggled with being discriminated against for the color of her skin, who was, abused as a child, and yet look at where she is today. And it's because she made a commitment to take steps in her life towards building her own self-confidence, her own self-reliance and independence, to improve her self-respect. So confidence comes from achieving goals. It comes from having these difficult situations in our life and being able to look back and say, I can do this. And I know I can do this because I've gotten through that situation before. And when you look at Sayyidah Zainab, I mean, wow, she's one of the most confident women in human history. To stand in front of Yazid and lecture him, and to tell him that I wouldn't even be speaking to you, but this situation compels me to. Her parents from a young age instilled self-confidence into her. They made sure she knew her self-worth. They made sure she knew her value. They encouraged her to be an active member of the community, to preach about Islam. And I think that's a wonderful reminder to us as parents, as well as to myself. We have to be so cautious about how we speak to our children, because the way that we speak to them becomes their inner voice. Okay? The way we speak to our children becomes their inner voice. And a lot of times when I talk to youth who are struggling with their parents, it's not even about what is being said, what the message is that the parents are trying to convey. It's about how it's being communicated that is a lot of times hurtful. And I can tell you one thing that I've learned over time is that if a child feels judged, they will not come to you for help. If you do not make children and youth feel like they have a safe space to address concerns that are bothering them, they will go elsewhere and look for the answers. They will not come to you. And so we've got to make sure that we're adopting a non-judgmental attitude, especially with our own family members. And I work on the opposite spectrum as well, with clients who tend to have the mindset of being a victim of their past as well, or blaming their parents for why it is the way they are today. And this is not healthy either. This is not helpful. It's a common reason that I get for a lack of self-worth, but it's not a good reason, okay? The bottom line is all parents are doing the best that they know how to do to raise their children. And no matter what happened in your childhood in contributing to a lack of self-worth, you always have the power in the here and now to learn how to become a more assertive, confident person, okay? You can always look for ways to find the beauty in yourself. And just the fact that you're here today, the fact that you exist, means Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala believed you were worthy of being created. Right? Just think about that for a moment there. Your value is never contingent upon what others think of you. Your value is already God-driven and God-given. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. And in my line of work, I've come across two types of people. Those with a rigid religiosity and those with a spiritual religiosity. I find that Muslims with a very rigid, black and white interpretation of Islam tend to struggle the most with feeling insecure about themselves. And let me elaborate. I want to be clear about something. Islam doesn't have any place for rigidity. Okay? Islam is a religion of compassion, of love. Allah doesn't want us to be antagonistic. You'll find that people with a rigid interpretation of Islam, they're very hard on themselves. People who are hard on themselves are also very hard on their family, on their wives, on their spouses or their kids. It creates this ripple effect, and it takes on its own energy. And unfortunately, I've seen far too many women these days turning away from Islam because they constantly feel like they're being judged or unsupported within the Muslim community. They already have to deal with Islamophobia on the outside, so they figure, well, if I can't beat them, I might as well join them. And they take their hijabs off. Maybe they go to the opposite extreme. They drink and engage in all kinds of behaviors that go against the principles that they valued the most at one point in their lives. Which brings me to a question that a friend recently asked me, and I've actually been asked this question in numerous different ways on different occasions, so I thought it would be relevant to you all today to share. And so the question is, Sister Anisa, do you know what I keep wondering about when it comes to Islam and mental health? I wonder if within our culture we are making ourselves victims and building in shame and guilt for things which Allah would not want. I have a hard time separating when I read certain passages in the Quran who Allah is addressing, especially when He uses more firm language. Do you think it's intended for all? Because we all have a wide range of potential for both good or evil? Or do you think it's aimed at people who are more capable and willing to do wrong and hurt others? I just wonder about how we should treat ourselves when we have made a mistake, from things like missing prayers to disrespecting parents or wasting our time. So I think this is a wonderful question that we all need to ask ourselves, and it's one that comes up a lot. And my answer to this is the following. In short, yes, I do believe many of us have a tendency to dig ourselves into holes of shame, thinking that by making ourselves feel more ashamed, it's going to improve our relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This actually has the opposite effect of what we're trying to achieve. If you look at the research of Dr. Brené Brown, I highly recommend you look at her research, and she's done some TED Talks as well, but she researches shame and the concept of shame and how it affects people. And she's found that shame only causes us to regress from a mental health standpoint. it doesn't help us improve confidence. It doesn't improve our spirituality. It just digs us deeper and deeper into that hole. And if you look in certain regions of South Africa, I recently learned something interesting. There's a concept called Ubuntu. But in certain regions of South Africa, when somebody has done something wrong, he's taken to the center of the village, and for 2 days, the community will come to that person and tell him all the good things that he's done. He'll remind him of his true nature and how to connect back to that. And I think there's something very beautiful about that, about focusing on our strengths. And my recommendation is, to try to adopt an attitude where we're strength-based, not only with ourselves, but other people. And so a lot of us, unfortunately, have this attitude of Allah being this punisher, and as a result, we're constantly holding this inner guilt and shame, and I don't think that's healthy. But at the same time, I want to make an important point that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala recognizes that people have differing levels of faith, all right? For some people, their worship of Allah is based on the fear of going to hell, right? They don't want to go to hell, and so their worship is out of that fear. For some people, their worship is motivated by wanting something in return, a sort of trader, if you will. Other people, their worship of Allah is motivated by gratitude and the belief that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is all deserving of worship. Now, none of these attitudes are haram per se, but what do you think is the best attitude to adopt? What do you think is the Zainabbiya mindset? Gratitude, right? That's the most evolved level of faith and iman. When we worship Allah out of the recognition of all the beauty that He has given us, right? Not because we're scared of going to hell or we want something in return, but because we need Him and we know how badly we need Him. And we're so grateful for all the infinite mercies that He has given us. By the way, we see this dynamic in everyday life too, okay? From a psychological standpoint, what motivates each person varies. So I'll give an example of this. Imagine that you are driving, okay, and you've come across a school zone. What are you going to do? Slow down, right? You're going like 20 miles per hour at that point. So why do some of us slow down, right? There's usually 2 reasons. Either the person slows down because they don't want to get a ticket from the police and be fined, or a person slows down because they don't want to run over a child. What do you think is the better reason to slow down? Not to run over a child, right? But unfortunately, some of us, and some of us are motivated by different things, and it's different and it varies for each person. But again, a more evolved level is to think of the greater good in the situation, right? The bottom line is Allah recognizes all of us have different impetuses for why we do certain things. But also we all have the ability to rewire our minds and to focus on a mindset that's best as well. So my suggestion is that if you've committed a sin or you've erred, instead of beating yourself up and trying to make yourself feel all this guilt, just stop and identify how you can prevent this from happening again. What are even some small, feasible shifts you can make in your life to prevent yourself from falling into that same situation again? If you fall down, there's a saying, don't kick me while I'm down. When somebody's already on the floor and you keep kicking them, they're not going to get back up. And yet we do that to ourselves. We kick ourselves while we're down. Right? If you've fallen down, just make a commitment to Allah. Allah, I'm going to do better tomorrow. I'm going to get back up on that horse. You don't have to try to create so much guilt and inner shame in order to achieve that. Because it's not perfection that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala expects. It's rather the striving towards the truth, right? None of us are perfect. But it's the striving that Allah cares about, that we're working towards that goal every day. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. The next concept within the Zainabbiya mindset that I want to focus on is healing from toxic people and how to see the beauty in others around you. Okay. As women, I notice that we struggle with the concept of hased, or envy, at times. And I think we have to be very careful with this concept. And I believe we live in a day and age where social media further complicates this issue. And in fact, there have been studies that have done, one recent study, in fact, by the National Institute of Health, which linked high social media use to depression. And other research also found that social media tended to increase people's anxiety about how they compare to other people. Okay? This is very important. Every time you post something on social media, whether it's that you just graduated from college, or you just got married, or maybe you're a parent who just went out on a date night after 1 year after just having a baby, there's going to be two responses from the people on the other side looking at your post. Either they're going to look at it and say, wow, mashallah, I'm so happy for her or him, right? Or they're going to look at it and compare themselves and say, well, I wish that my husband would do that for me, or I wish that I could graduate. You know, we've got to be realistic that whenever we post something, there is that human nature to what's called compare and despair in psychology, right? It's a kind of it's a negative cognition. It's comparing and despairing, okay? And I think that it's important, very important, to be cautious these days about what you put out there. And the reason I bring this up is I've had clients come to me and just completely disappointed and trying to cut themselves off from other people because they've recognized they've overshared some things about themselves, particularly on social media. And it affects their future relationships with other people. They feel jaded. They feel mistrustful because maybe something they posted was taken out of context, right? And so they have this now just mistrust of even connecting with anyone else. So I recommend you try to think about at least 3 things in your life that you know are sacred to you, that are important to you, that you want to keep private. Maybe it's your love life. Maybe it's photos of your kids. Maybe it's something else that's really important to you. And I think if you set those healthy boundaries for yourself, hopefully you won't find yourself on the opposite extreme, which is to completely disconnect from other people due to a belief or mindset that others are jealous. I have seen people in the community that will not announce their engagement or the birth of their child to longtime friends and or family out of this fear that they're going to envy them. And this is not Islam, sisters. I mean, this might have some cultural basis, but it's not Islam. This is an example of a destructive mindset that doesn't allow for any form of self-healing or positive relationships with those around us. And then I want to imagine yourself on the receiving end of this. Imagine that I'm coming to you, telling you that, you know, sister, everyone's just so jealous of me. You know, they're just so jealous of my success. I don't even want to tell anybody what's going on anymore. I'm just alone. I'm by myself these days. What are you going to think on the other end of that if I tell you that? Are you going to want to spend time with me? No. Why? Because it sounds arrogant. That's the first thing. Do you know what I mean? But I hear it a lot. And then people wonder that after they've told somebody that statement and that person no longer wants to spend time with them, what is going to be the reaction on that person's end? They're jealous of me. They're not jealous. People do not like being around others who have narcissistic tendencies. People don't like that energy. But the ego defense mechanism in that situation is, oh, just jealous. We have to stop using that as a community, as this defense mechanism. All of us have things that we need to work on in ourselves. But let's not just brush it off and say, just jealous. The so-and-so's just jealous. Because when we have this mindset, okay, that everybody is out to get us, it impacts our relationships with other people in the community, okay? Another word for this cognitive distortion is engaging in mind reading, right? Thinking that we know what somebody else is thinking of us. Do we really know? I can't look inside your brain and know exactly what you're thinking, you know? And I also don't pretend to say that there aren't people who do not wish the best for you. There are those people, right? You're never going to be everybody's cup of tea. And that's okay. It's okay. But what do you think the Zainabbiya mindset is here? The Zainabbiya mindset is to always think the best of the person around you. That doesn't mean we aren't balanced and realistic, okay? But there's a common expression that we have from Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, and he said that you should give your brother or sister 70 excuses before accusing them. Now, in Old Arabic, 70 was a number that was used to exaggerate, so it doesn't literally mean 70 excuses. It's kind of like saying 1,000 for us, okay? But the point here is you don't have to take everything personally that somebody does wrong to you, okay? You're not going to be everybody's cup of tea in life. I also want to clarify that making excuses for people does not mean that one should stand for mistreatment either, okay? One must seek understanding and forgiveness, but also take measures to protect oneself from harm as well. And I think especially when we look at domestic violence in our community, where a spouse might be in an abusive relationship, or maybe a friend has betrayed you on more than one occasion with information that you've entrusted them with. It doesn't mean that you don't, forgiveness doesn't mean you don't take measures to protect yourself, but rather it's the understanding that none of us is perfect. And I know this is a challenge, probably one of the most challenging life situations we deal with. And I consider myself a highly sensitive person, so I get it. And I know that for the clients I've worked with who consider themselves highly sensitive people, they struggle the most with some of these issues. But, it's over time, especially in the field that I work in, when you understand the context for why somebody is acting the way they act, when you understand what exactly is impacting someone's behavior, it makes sense. And so I've come to a place in my life where I've tried to understand rather than judge. And I find that that helps to manage people with a lot of toxic qualities rather than just to get angry and to dwell in the situation and to take it personal. And if you are someone who struggles with seeing the beauty in other people, just remember the following verse. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in Surah Fatir, verse 10, "Man kana yuridu al-izza falillahi al-izza." Whoever desires honor, let him seek it from Allah, for Allah alone is honor. So when you want Allah to raise you up, set the intention that whatever you do is for Allah. Even something as simple as exercising can be a form of worshiping Allah. Because when you make the intention to exercise in order to take care of the body Allah has given you, this ni'mah that Allah has given you, so that you can serve Him, that is worship. It's not always just about sitting down, doing certain du'as and prayers and the rituals. It's also the intention of honor that belongs to Allah, that you set each day in what you do. And as well, we know Allah is the originator of that honor. And so when you see another woman in the community who's active, whether she's, has a great job or she's just a great mother, she's doing hard work. There's no elevator to success in life. Anytime you see a successful person, it's because they've worked so hard to get there. They've sacrificed time with their family. They have sacrificed their sleep. They miss quality time perhaps with a child or someone that they love. And it's important for all of us to have mentors in our life as well, someone that you look up to and want to emulate, and that you want to be as a leader. So be the leader that you admire in other people. And for those of you who are mothers in the audience, I think it's a struggle to have a strong sense of self. And for those of you who will be mothers, it's important to keep this in the back of your mind, that caring for your children becomes such a big part of our lives that sometimes we lose that sense of who we are and what our personal goals are. A lot of moms will ask me how I manage to keep a work-life balance in check with everything going on. And I think it's part of it comes from the importance of, again, being kind to yourself and knowing that you're going to have to scale back at some points in your life, they're in different seasons of your life. And that's okay. You know, we can't be all things all the time. But you can also create goals for yourself that are manageable for the season of life that you're in. And I think it's really the stagnancy of not having any personal goals to work towards that creates this dynamic of comparing oneself to others. So I want to give another car analogy. Let's say you're driving, right? And instead of looking ahead, I suddenly start looking at the car next to me and who's driving that car. What's going to happen? Accident. Yeah, I'm going to have an accident. If I'm in my lane and I get fixated on what someone else is doing here, what someone else is doing there, I'm going to have an accident. And so it's important that we can use this as the analogy for life, that when you're driving a car, your goal is to get to that destination safely and the safest way possible, right? We acknowledge everything going on, but at the same time, when we're fixated and we're comparing and despairing, we're going to have an accident. It causes us to regress in life. And so you've got to stay in your lane. And I think that the only person you should try to be better than is the person you were yesterday. Okay? Imam Ali alayhi salam said the worst of our faults is our interest in other people's faults. So important reminder. And I want to mention that just because this is a women's event and I'm talking about jealousy does not mean that women are the only ones that get jealous either, because I've often heard men describing women as having more of a propensity in nature to be jealous, and this is actually far from the truth. We have stories of Nabi Yusuf alayhi salam where his brothers were so jealous of him that they were trying to kill him, right? We had Simon, who if he hadn't stepped in and suggested they put him in the well instead, then he would have, they would have killed him. We have the story of Habil and Qabil, right? And it's been there. It's a timeless issue from the inception of shaitan. And so, inshallah, my hope is we can use the Zainabbiya mindset to really focus on the beauty in those around us. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. The last aspect of the Zainabbiya mindset that I want to focus on is healing from traumatic situations, how to see the beauty in all of your circumstances. So when it comes to dealing with challenging life situations, I think that what Zainab alayhi salam experienced has to be one of the most traumatic situations in human history. I mean, to watch your family butchered one by one, your babies deprived of water, your right to hijab being torn off, walk through the street in humiliation, watching people who memorize the Quran siding with the oppressors, and yet she would respond with, I see nothing but the beauty of Allah, right, in all situations. And that's resilience right there. And I know personally there have been difficult situations in my life where I've been able to get through it just by remembering Sayyidah Zainab and what she went through. I would think, this is hard, but this is not as hard as what she had to endure. And if she could get through that situation, then I can get through it too. I would take great comforts in those moments of loss and disappointment and just calling on her presence to be with me during that time. In the Holy Quran, Allah talks about how do not think that those who have died in the way of Allah are dead. No, they're alive. They're with us, though you cannot perceive it. And so all of you in this room, when you're dealing with something difficult, a situation that's too much to bear, call on Sayyidah Zainab to be with you. Call on her presence to be with you in that moment. She's not dead. Call on her strength, on her confidence, on her resilience to be with you. Call on Asiya, call on Fatima, call on all the women to be with you in that moment. They're not dead. Ask them for their strength in your hardest moments. Christians have a saying, WWJD, what would Jesus do? And I think it's a wonderful thing, actually, to apply to our lives. We should ask ourselves that question, as well as what would Muhammad do? What would Zainab do? Alayhim salam. Let's not say, oh, well, Zainab was just so honorable and amazing, and there's no way that I could be as good as her. Okay? Remember, Zainab alayhi salam wasn't masuma. She wasn't infallible. Yet her character and actions were always in line with the message of her grandfather, Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. So we too, salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. So you can also be fallible, right? And be righteous like Zainab, inshallah. The definition of the Zainabbiya mindset is to see the beauty in the brokenness. Okay? If you've ever looked at a mosaic, it's made of many, many pieces of broken glass. And if you were to look at all those pieces of broken glass on the floor, it looks like an ugly mess, let's be honest, right? But when you take the time to put all those pieces together, it becomes this masterpiece, okay? And that's an analogy for ourselves, that in those times where we feel broken, you can put yourself back together. You are that masterpiece, and you can be a masterpiece and a work in progress at the same time. You do have the power to pick yourself up, to put those pieces back together. And I want to be clear, it takes a lot of practice to maintain a Zainabbiya mindset. To have a mindset of gratitude in every circumstance, it takes practice. It's not easy. You really do have to rewire your mind. In the field of psychology, many counselors and therapists base their counseling theory on what's called the cognitive behavioral model. Essentially, it's looking at how our thoughts affect our feelings and behavior. It's looking at any cognitive distortions that might be contributing to how a person is feeling or behaving with others around them. And the premise is that everything originates from an individual's own thinking about a situation, their own way of processing their feelings and the world around them, if you will. And I think this concept is very much in line with Islamic principles. Some of us have a tendency to engage in thinking patterns that are toxic, that literally cause us to become sick. In fact, it's scientifically proven that our thoughts can be psychosomatic and bring about illness within our bodies. Our thoughts are powerful. If you've ever had a situation where you've been embarrassed, what happens to your face? You get red, right? Just by a simple thought, you were able to create that reaction that everyone can see. SubhanAllah. So one of the most powerful cognitive tools that we can use in any negative situation is something called reframing. It's where you take a situation and you align your thoughts in a way that's positive and rational and realistic, that helps you move forward in a way that's proactive, that's progressive and healthy. And I want to stop here and just say something important as well, that it's crucial to differentiate between feeling sad and having grief and having clinical depression, okay? Because there may be some of you in this room who struggle with mental health related concerns, and that might be beyond your control. Depression is not a sin. Depression is not a weakness of faith. There are some people who struggle, who, exercise, they eat well, they go for Hajj, they're good Muslims, but they also struggle with mental pathology, and it's a real issue. Some of our minds may have an issue with the uptake of serotonin or some form of chemical imbalance. And so that's not your fault if that's what you're going through. It doesn't make you a bad Muslim, okay? Because worse than somebody who tells you that you're a sinner for being depressed or having suicidal thoughts is a community that refuses to acknowledge that this is an issue and that judges the person's struggle rather than making a safe space to talk about it. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. And we need to make these safe spaces in our masjid to talk about these issues, because if we don't, members of our community are going to leave and they're going to go elsewhere to find the answers, okay? Going to see a mental health counselor is not haram. It will not take you away from Allah. In fact, it has the potential to bring you closer to Allah. As Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, said, "Man arafa nafsa faqad arafa rabbah," that to know oneself is to know Allah. So if you or someone you know is struggling, encourage them to reach out for mental health support. You know, prayer is great, but if you have a broken leg, are you just going to make dua and say, "Ya Allah, heal my broken leg"? No, you're going to do that, of course, but you're going to go to the doctor as well. You're going to treat it. You're going to treat the issue. Yet when it comes to mental illness or mental health concerns, we just say, just do dua and that's it. Okay, so we need to really just encourage the community to decrease the stigma. And again, it's not a weakness in your life to have moments where you feel broken or vulnerable. We all have those moments, okay? It's a weakness when you have those moments in your life and you do nothing about it. You don't reach out for help. You're not proactive. That's when it becomes a weakness. And so the Zainabbiya mindset, it really extends just beyond ourselves, but it focuses on the greater betterment of our community. When we have inner gratitude, when we have a healthy mindset, we then have the ability to sit with somebody in their time of grief and loss, to express empathy in that moment. As a licensed mental health counselor and a crisis counselor for the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline, if there's one thing I've learned, it's that when people are in psychological distress, they feel like they are the only ones in the whole world going through their issue. The silence can just be so deafening. The truth is, you're not alone in whatever you're facing. And I can't tell you how many times I've received a call on the Suicide Prevention Lifeline, almost identical to the last few calls I had in that same day. But again, that person who's experiencing the distress feels utterly alone and helpless in their situation. So I ask you all today to think about at least one aspect of your life that you want to change, one aspect of your life where you can adopt a Zainabbiya mindset. You know, we discussed the importance of focusing on self-beauty, on relational beauty, and circumstantial beauty. What are some of the areas you can work on in your life to develop gratitude that will carry you through those difficult situations? And I hope that just as Sayyidah Zainab alayhi salam was a messenger of justice and truth, that you will take this message back to your families as well, to your husbands, your sons, to your parents, anybody who needs to hear it. Because as women, you have a role similar to prophethood. You know, you're a guide for your family. You are the raiser of generations. And so don't underestimate the power that you have to make an impact. So again, ask yourself today, what is it that your legacy is going to be when you leave the earth? And how can you honor Sayyidah Zainab's name, inshallah? Thank you so much. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.